I told myself that I wasn't going to go through life and I wasn't going to be unhappy if I didn't have to. That I was going to do the work in order to become like the child that I was, this happy-go-lucky child who loved painting, loved hugs, like was always smiling. Like I knew who I was, and I knew that the person I was looking at was not who I really was at the core.
Welcome to the Greatness Ignited podcast, where we have conversations about the greatness of others so that you can recognize the greatness in you. My name is Barry Overton, and I have been studying greatness for the last 7 years, and it is taking my career to new heights. And now me and a few of the successful people that I have had the honor of interviewing are coming together to ignite your greatness and light the fire within.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of the Greatness Ignited podcast. I am your host, Barry Overton, and what we're doing here, we're having conversations about the greatness in others so you can realize the greatness in you. And I got to tell you, I got another amazing guest. I like to talk about everyday greatness, people that are just living their lives and doing amazing things. And I've had the opportunity to be able to find some amazing people. This is yet another one that is going to inspire, empower, and impact you with her story. So let me just tell you a little bit about her. Number one, she is a number one best-selling author. She is also a Les Brown trained speaker. She's a certified coach. Get this, she has attended Auburn University where she got her BA. She also got her one of her master's degrees at Auburn University. And then she attended George Washington University where she got another master's degree. And now she is currently getting her PhD from Yale University. All right, so just on the education side has done some amazing things, but it doesn't stop there. She also serves part-time as an Army Medical Service Officer. She is a first lieutenant and she is on the captain's list. She has her own business. She's an entrepreneur. She's an academic success coach, and she helps students successfully navigate through the higher education using virtual coaching through her business, which is Crystal Clear Innovation. Now, I want you to also think about this. So to have a business like that, she's had to have some pretty good success herself in regards to scholarships. She has received over $670,000 in scholarship awards, including the Bill and Melinda Gates Millennium Scholarship and also the Yale School of Public Health Dean's Research Award. So she is definitely an expert in knowing how to get scholarship funds. Her best-selling book, Crystal Clear, A Journey of Self-Discovery, is on Amazon and many of the outlets that you can purchase. I highly recommend, if you're looking to be able to navigate that process of being able to get scholarships and the whole college experience, pick up a copy of her book. Now, her ultimate goal is really to raise awareness for the potential that we all have as human beings and show that it's possible to rise against all odds and live our wildest dreams. Ladies and gentlemen, she's only 26 years old and she's done everything that I just mentioned to you. So I have such a pleasure of bringing her on and letting you meet her. Ladies and gentlemen, Miss Crystal Harrell. How you doing, Crystal?
I'm doing well. How are you, Barry?
Awesome. I bet for a minute you're like, who is he talking about?
Oh my God. How do you know that? That's why I'm smiling so hard. Cause like the whole time I'm like, who is this person? Like, I want to meet her.
It's you.
It's crazy. Cause I don't really think of like, until I wrote the book, I didn't really think about all those things. And just like you always see it from someone else's perspective when someone is reading your bio, because like when you're living it, it feels different from, actually looking at it, I guess.
Yeah, you're so right. I mean, it's the same thing when I give my bio to people and they look at all the things that I've been able to do. And it's truly impressive what you've been able to do in 26 years of life, because you got to think you were a kid for a good chunk of that 26 years. And, so in reality, it's like the last 8, years or so is
Mm.
where a lot of those things have occurred. So the bottom line is you're not wasting any time. And I love that because I tell people all the time that, when they look at the fact that I've been 26 years in law enforcement, 20 years as a real estate agent, 25 years as an
Wow.
entrepreneur. They start adding the numbers up and like, dude, how old are you? And I tell them I don't have any time to waste because I
Yes.
learned only just a few short years ago. I learned that tomorrow is not promised, and it was a tough lesson because I learned it through the loss of my father and the
Mm.
loss of a sibling within 13 months of one another. And I'm 53. I'll be 53 on Monday. And for me, it's like there's still so many things to do. And I can see that in you. I'm sure that all these accomplishments that you have, there's still so many things ahead for you that you want to accomplish. So I can definitely appreciate, the hustle and that grind that you have to be able to go out and do all of these things so early. But it excites me because I know, when we talk again, say 3 years from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, it's going to be a whole nother set of things that you've been able to accomplish in that time.
Thank you so much, and happy early birthday, by the way.
Thank you.
And everything that you're saying is 100% true because you find that even though from the outside, like you spending, 20, you said 26 years in law enforcement, 20 years in real estate, like to us, like it just seems like there's so much more we could have done in the process. There's so much more things like we would like to do with the time. But
Mhm.
I think a lot of the times it takes us really stepping back and looking at it from the outside view and saying like, okay, like we may want to do more, but there's still so much that we have done in the time that we've been given.
Mhm.
And I think for me also it's I'm getting to a point in my life where I'm trying to slow down a little bit, not with the things that I do, like the impact that I want to make, but just with the way I think about what I should be doing, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So, and I think it all starts very early on because now, just like you, when I wrote my book, it opened my eyes to, man, I see how I got to where I am.
Yes.
And it goes all the way back to childhood. It goes to the
Mhm.
lessons that I learned from my parents. It's also from lessons that I learned from watching other people make mistakes. That's,
Right.
man, I'm not going to do that. But I want to talk about your childhood because again, we're talking about some very prestigious universities that you've attended and are attending. So is that, or were you born with a silver spoon in your mouth? Did you just have it made as a child? Or was there some challenges along the way?
Well, there were definitely some challenges, but I didn't understand those challenges until I got older. So I grew up, like the subtitle of my book, From Public Housing to Ivy League. Like I grew up in public housing apartments. My family is originally from Miami, so my mom is from Liberty City. If you watch Les Brown a lot, you understand he talks about Liberty City because that's where he's from, and
Mhm.
it was a rough area in the late '80s and the mid '90s, which is when I was born. So in order to kind of move away from that area, when my mom was 6 months pregnant with me, she actually packed up the family and moved from Liberty City to a small town in rural Alabama called Ozark. So from there we lived in public housing apartments, and she ended up having three more children at that time as well. So in all I have 10, well, 9 brothers and sisters. So you can
Mhm.
imagine like already being in a living in a poverty level, below the poverty level, actually, but like living in those types of situations on top of having so many mouths to feed. It wasn't always easy, but my parents were both ministers. And so we grew up, with faith, we grew up in faith, and we grew up with a lot of love in our household. So that love and that faith actually shielded me from a lot of adversity that you typically would face while you're a child or while you're growing up. And I'm so grateful for my parents because no, we weren't born with a silver spoon in our mouths, but we were given so much love, and we were taught how to have faith. And to me, those are the greatest gifts that my parents could have given me. It's amazing.
Yeah, yeah, and you mentioned you and 9 other siblings. So again, that's really not, most people that grow up in households where maybe they, just getting by. In many instances, it may be a, two, three, maybe four siblings in the house, but there was 10 of you that your
Yes.
parents were taking care of during that time.
Yes.
And yeah, and having to do it in as well as in public housing, I'm sure that through that process there were challenges, but there were lessons that you learned through those challenges.
Oh, yes. The biggest challenge was just understanding what was important in life and how to speak and how to think. Because my dad, like I talk about in my book, my dad was my first educator. And so there were certain things that we could and could not say around him and in the house. So, for example, if we were to say something, like we couldn't say that we're stupid. Like he would not allow us to call ourselves stupid or anyone else stupid. Like that was a big no-no. Or we
Mhm.
would only speak about things that we actually want to happen. So he would always, preach about how there's power, life and death in the tongue. And so
Mhm.
we had to be very careful about what we spoke about. And so that's something at the time I was like, oh my gosh, like my dad is nuts. Like, why is he like, this is not a big deal. But as I began to get older and understand and read more and study more about, personal development and spiritual growth and, like laws of the universe and like actually sit down and read the Bible for myself, it was like I'm starting to see that it's actually very important how you speak, because that actually is an indication of what you're thinking about, and we all know that you become what you think about all day long. So
Yeah.
I really appreciate that lesson. I believe that was the biggest lesson that I got growing up, and that education was something that no one could take away from me.
Yeah, and I love that point that your father was making, because we often hear that we are influenced by the words that we hear around us. Well,
Yes.
when we're speaking, we definitely hear our own words.
Mm.
And one of the things that I do is I actually, for my affirmations, they're written down, I read them, but I've also recorded myself. So when I'm sleeping, that I'm
Mm.
listening to my voice of what I'm projecting for my life in the future, what it is that I want for the future. Because see, the conscious mind sleeps, but the subconscious mind never sleeps. So when
Yes.
it's getting positive words of affirmation, it only knows that to be true. So yeah, so
Wow.
even at that, living in the project, you were getting some Ivy League education from your father right then and there on something that will make a huge difference in everyone's lives if they just do those things.
Right. Oh man, I like while you were talking, I'm just like so many light bulbs started to go off because I'm like, I got to do this. Like you hear it, but like you really don't understand it until someone actually explains it the way that you
Mhm,
just did. Like it makes sense that it would be good to record our affirmations and listen to it in our own voice, because
mhm.
like when you speak, it has so much power. So I'm just like, okay. And then your subconscious automatically recognizes it because it's your voice. So like so
Exactly.
many light bulbs were going off. And you're definitely right about education. And because I think like we're told a lot like how to go to school. You have to
Mhm.
remember facts, you have to regurgitate those facts on an exam, but we're not actually taught how to think. And learning how to think and what to think about are two different things.
Yeah, you brought up such a great point. One of my mentors, probably about 6, 7 years ago, when I was asking him, how do I take my business at the time
Mm.
to the next level? How do I take my life to the next level? He gave me this one bit of advice that blew my mind when he said it. He said, practice thinking. And when he
Mm.
said it, for me, it was like, man, because you think about it, we never just sit down and think about, we can practice if we're in a sport or if we sing or if we dance, we practice those talents. But one thing that we don't do is practice thinking.
Mm.
And what I've learned to do from that is to be able to get into those quiet places, take the information that I've learned from reading and start applying certain things. One of the Think and Grow Rich is one of the
Yes.
best books, I think, to practice thinking, because if you apply these principles that Napoleon Hill gives us in the book, you are practicing thinking.
Yes.
So you're absolutely right. I mean, it's it's an area or a skill that I think we neglect. We don't ever think about, because I think very few people practice thinking. But
Yes.
when you do, it really opens up how you're able to achieve things in life.
Yes, 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 yes. Think and Grow Rich is actually one of the first books I read on my personal development journey, because I don't know, I guess like, you're a college freshman or underclassmen and you're just like, oh, I need to figure out how to make money because, you feel like there's not enough of it when you're in that time frame. So I picked up that book with the intentions of learning how to generate wealth, because you actually learn how to make money and how to generate wealth from your parents. So
Mhm.
like I said, I grew up in public housing, so you can imagine what my relationship to money, what my subconscious believed about money, that it was limited, that you had to save everything and you couldn't spend anything. That was never, like I said, like there are certain signals or certain messages around money that I received growing up, not because my parents were malicious. It's just they learned how to deal with money from their parents and so on and so forth. So it's like you have to realize that certain key facts are passed down generationally as well. So I picked up that book because I wanted to change my relationship with money, and it gave me so much more than money. It gave me the blueprint to how to just walk and navigate through life.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's funny. That was actually the very first book that I read, and it just totally opened me up to
Yeah.
Tony Robbins and the Les Browns and all
Hmm.
the other motivational speakers out there. But yeah, it's a very powerful book. There's greatness within you. We've all heard those words before, but do we truly believe it? I can tell you, it took me about 3 years of studying greatness before I realized there truly is greatness inside of me. And I wrote a book called Ignite Your Greatness that proves the theory that we all have greatness within us. And I take it a step further. Once I prove it to you, I tell you exactly how to ignite the fire within you and take your life to new heights. Get your copy of Ignite Your Greatness at igniteyourgreatness.com. Also available on Amazon. So we're going to shift gears a little bit. I do want to talk about, we've talked about some of the challenges, but I think really the biggest challenge that you probably had as a child growing up was the loss of your father. I think, were you 11 years old, if I'm not mistaken?
Yes, I was 11.
Yeah, yeah, and I know that you shared that with me, and he was such a huge impact on your life, and then to be set at such an early age that you lose him, and I'm sure that not only losing him as your father and the love that you had for him, but also now you have a mom that has to take care of 10 kids and not only take care of 10 kids but provide financially for 10 kids. So can you share during that time, number one, the loss of your father and the hurt and the pain, but also just from a financial aspect, what you guys experienced there?
Yeah, I would, love to talk about it because that event actually ended up being the catalyst for my journey of self discovery and journey of self awareness. But at the time, obviously, I didn't recognize that because I was so young.
Mm.
And when my father got sick, I noticed that something was different with him because, this once active father became more and more inactive. Like he stopped, taking me to the library, taking us to the pool. And so I just noticed that, he was always tired. He started to lose weight. So I understood that he was, now that I'm older, I understood that he was going through chemotherapy during that time as well. And it makes you exhausted, it makes you tired. And it also like changes your personality too for some people. And so I did notice that my dad started to just change. And so I talk about it in more detail in my book. But during the time that I was 11, I just remember my dad going away to the hospital. And I think maybe it was like a week or 2 weeks passed and I hadn't seen him. And then I remember one day I woke up and there were a bunch of people in my living room. And I saw my mom who was sitting on the arm of the couch. And she looked at us and said, your dad passed away last night. And
Mhm.
after that moment, it's like everything became muffled. It was like I was almost like time just stopped. And I remember that moment. And when I got older, I realized like that was the moment that I became traumatized because it was only after that when I realized that my whole life was changing. Like my mom had to pack the house that we were living in. We moved to a very small, even smaller rural town called Barber County, or a county called Barber County, and we moved to Texasville, which is where my grandmother was living. Where she was born before my mom moved to Miami, before they picked up and moved to Miami. So, we were living in my grandmother's old trailer. Like it was just like really hard. And then my mom ended up losing that trailer. And so we had to move to different places. And so a lot in my life changed. Like I think we moved a total of 6 times after the death of my father.
Wow.
And So I was going back and forth between schools, and so it was just like really tough financially as well, because my mom had to get several jobs just to support us because she only had a high school diploma. I remember some days I would come home and she would already be gone, and we didn't see her until the next day because she would come back so late. And so, and I would notice that my mom's personality was changing as well. Like she, just she was once that, lively type parent, and then she became more, just different. And I realized that she was just grieving. And so there was a lot that changed after the death of my father. And, a lot of that actually happened psychologically as well. So I started having panic attacks, which I didn't know were associated with that, because before my dad passed away, I never had panic attacks.
Mm,
And then after he passed away, I probably had like a couple during the school year. And it wasn't until I started studying human development and family studies at Auburn that I discovered that when childhood trauma isn't addressed, when it happens, it actually manifests itself into, it can manifest itself into adult mental illnesses like panic attacks, like anxiety and depression. So many, I was starting to understand so many things in my life surrounding that event that happened when I was a child, when I started to become educated, when I started to learn. And that's when I started to go to counseling, and I started my, personal development and spiritual growth journey, because I told myself that I wasn't going to go through life and I wasn't going to be unhappy if I didn't have to. That I was going to do the work in order to become like the child that I was, this happy-go-lucky child who loved painting, loved hugs, like was always smiling. Like I knew who I was, and I knew that the person I was looking at was not who I really was at the core,
mm. Yeah. Yeah, and it's so what I love about that, and when I hear people like yourself that are going through challenges, you are always looking for the bright spot, the daylight, the lesson from the challenge. And I think, again, we have people that, you're going through very hard times in life, and we have like a woe is me mentality, like, why is this happening to me? Instead of being in a place of, okay, this is happening for a reason. There's something that I'm supposed to take from this that's going to make me stronger, that's going to make me better. And it sounds very much like that's how you were able to take many of the things, that the challenges that you experienced, with the loss of your father, and then the financial hardships that it created. And then what I love is that from all of that came a girl and her dad, a children's book that you wrote. So again, you've written two books. You've released two books in 2021.
Yes.
And again, I love the fact that you were able to dedicate this, something to your dad as a legacy, and these memories that you have of the things that you and your father, and I'm sure your siblings, were also able to be a part of those things that he attributed. So it again, legacy is something that I always talk about. And Les Brown, when I had him on the show, I talked to him about the fact that Mamie Brown is someone that wasn't famous, but is famous because
Yes.
he talks about her and he names her all the time. So I know who Mamie Brown is. Someone says
Yes.
Mamie Brown, we all know who that is if you know who Les Brown is. And I'm sure with your dad, over time, again, you're going to continue to talk about him, and his legacy continues to live on and grow through you speaking about him as your legacy is growing as well. So, again, I think it's a great tribute what you did with that book. What really inspired the children's book for you?
Oh, thank you. I always say like the way you talk about it, Barry, it's just like it warms my heart, because just hearing the way you speak about it, it sounds different than what I, how I speak about it to myself. But it's always spot on, because like everything you said about the legacy, like that's the reason why I wrote the book, to answer your question, because
Yeah.
I didn't want the memory of my father to, pass away. I
Mhm.
wanted him to be remembered for the dedication that he poured into me and my siblings.
Mhm.
Everything that he did when he was teaching us how to read and write, when he was taking us to the library, when he was teaching us how to swim. Because my dad was a Vietnam vet. And being ex-military, he made sure that we all knew how to swim when we were children.
Yeah.
And he conducted himself in a certain way, in a certain manner, and he wanted us to be basically just like efficient. Like he wanted us to be able to stand on our own 2 feet, and everything that he has done for me and my siblings, like I wanted that to be remembered. So every event that I talk about in that children's book actually happened.
Oh yeah. Yeah, that is awesome. And so those are great memories to have. And I think a lot of times, again, when one of the things how I look at death, because again, I lost my father, lost my brother, but this was
Yeah.
only 2015, 2016, so just a few years ago. And my dad was 83 at the time, and my brother was only 59, so he was still relatively
Yeah.
young, but it was still very tough to deal with those losses. And then being a police officer, I've lost people, in the line of duty. And it's always been one of those things where it's very difficult for me to deal with the loss of someone. But I also had to make sure that I appreciated the time that I received with them. I know that that was
Mm.
God given, that that person was my father, that person was my brother, this person was my friend.
Yes.
I had this time to create some amazing memories around them. And I think what you've done is you've taken those memories and you've been able to share them with other people. I hope there's going to be a part two or other segments to this book, because I do believe that there's another book in you of being able to talk about that loss of your father, but also the lessons that he taught you that you've been able to use up to these 26 years of life. But I guarantee you, when we could fast forward to when you're 50, and there's still going to be lessons over the next 24 years of life that come
Yes.
from your mom and dad, and particularly your dad. And he's, long after he's left this world, he's still making an impact on your life.
Yes, definitely. I actually like tell myself to like calm down because like there's so many books. I believe there's at least one book in everyone.
Oh yeah.
So it's difficult because like when you want to create, like when you shift from competing to creating,
Mhm.
it's like there's so many possibilities for you
Mhm.
to make an impact. And especially like being a writer, because I started writing after the death of my father to help me cope. So I kept a journal since I was like in middle school, and it's
Mhm.
helped me a lot. And I've always loved writing. And my mom is a writer too, so she's written like so many books as well. And
Mhm.
she's written children's books as well. So I have my mom's children's books, and I'm like, Mom, I'm going to help you get these published because these are really good.
Mhm.
But I feel like there's always something, there's always a story, and we are a collection of stories. That's what our life is. And so
Mhm.
the way you express that is up to you. Like some people choose expressing that through art, some people express it through dance. Me, I express it through writing. And so I definitely think that there will always be a way to use one of the stories that God has given me to show others that there's always a way out, and that
Yeah.
there's always an level of impact you can have just from walking in your truth.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Well, I got to tell you, and we've already talked about it, but this has inspired me as
Oh,
well to write a children's book. It was something that was not really on the table for me, but then when I read this and I understood that you have a whole nother audience that you're tapping into, and I realized that the speech that I do is probably something, because I talk about Superman and wanting, that was my biggest dream as a kid. I wanted to
yes.
be Superman. And I think kids can probably relate to that story better than adults can. So yeah, that's the next journey for me as well, inspired by Crystal Harrell.
It's gonna you're gonna have so much fun there because like writing the first nonfiction book, it was a
Mhm.
different level of involvement, of a different type of energy that I had to put forward. So it was more of like it was, I think it was maybe around 50,000 words. So
Mhm.
like I was constantly like every day pumping out the words, not as like a chore, but it was like a
Mhm.
harder labor. But when you are creating a children's book, you get to step back into that childlike
Mhm.
mind frame, and everything is so simple and everything
Mhm.
is fun. And so it was like you get to kind of like step back into a
Yeah,
very simple time in your life, and you get to put yourself in the shoes of children again. And it feels so good. Like that, writing the children's book was a lot more fun and it was a lot more creative. But writing
Mhm.
the first book was a lot more involved, and it was really like a heavy labor of love because I knew that someone needed this. As
Mhm.
painful as it was for me to look over my life and to talk about some events, especially events that really like what were hurtful, like losing my father, because I didn't spare, like any detail. I really like went back all the way with my ancestry because I studied my ancestry for like 6 years. So I started
Mhm.
with the legacy of my ancestors and I brought it all the way forward to where I am now.
Mhm.
Because in order to know where you're going, you have to know where you come from. And
Yeah.
so I did the work because I didn't want anyone telling me what my ancestry was or who I was from. And I know now where I came
Yeah.
from. Um, but with the children's book, it was like I get to think about things that were happy and things that were simple. And
Mhm.
you go through that process of, finding an illustrator that clicks with you. And
Mhm.
that is fun. And getting children to read it and seeing children being so excited because they love books. I know I loved books when I was a child. So you're going to have a lot of fun with your children's book. And it's really going to give you an opportunity to tap into a different type of mindset.
Yeah, yeah, and I've already kind of started down that journey, and I agree with you because the book that I wrote, the personal development book that I wrote, was much the same thing. It was a process. It was a year and a half of writing, and it did. It was at points it felt like it was a chore sometimes to write, but with the just thinking about the children's book, I get very excited. And I love talking about dreaming anyway. And I always say in one of the speeches that I do, I talk about the best dreamers on the planet are children because
Yes.
they dream without limitations, and they don't have doubts in their dreams until they get older and allow the adults around
Mhm.
them to tap into those subconscious thoughts and eat away at the dream that they, again, we all get to a point where we stop dreaming to a certain degree. And so that's a big part of what I want to be able to write about. And I love when I was reading your bio, part of it says that you want to help show people how to rise against all odds and live your wildest dreams. So that
Yes.
leads me into my next question. As a kid, what was your wildest dream?
I wanted to be an artist. I wanted to create works of art that made people happy when I showed it to them, and they would be really happy and say, "Oh, wow, that's so cool!" Like that's what I wanted to do. I used to go to the library and check out Rockwell books. I don't
Uh-huh.
know if you remember him.
Yeah. Mhm.
Yes, so I used to like check out some of his paintings and stuff like
Mhm.
that, and like I just wanted to create.
Yeah.
And I'm seeing that now in my life as well. I
Mhm.
also wanted to be like, I didn't know it at the time, but I wanted to be an entrepreneur because when I was
Mhm.
in preschool, I used to bring my mom's makeup to school and I used to sell it during break time. And she would always have to come to the school and I would get in trouble because she would be like, stop selling my makeup. You can't do this. Cause the kids would like put it on like while we were at school. Like I would sell it to them and I'd be like, don't wear this until you get home. But they would always put it on in school. And then they would find out that I was selling my mom's makeup at school. And then when I was in middle school and high school, I ended up, selling. So I would buy packs of candy from Walmart. So I'd buy like a bulk, and then I would sell each individual like piece of candy out of that package, and then I would end up with maybe a couple of dollars more in profit. So like that's what I used to do, and like everyone knew like I was the person to go to for like snacks and candy and stuff. So I would sell them out of my backpack. So it's like I didn't realize that like being an artist and wanting to be an entrepreneur, like those were things that were already like inside of me.
Yeah.
And when I started doing my ancestry, I found out that my second generation grandfather, his name was Joseph Levi Harrell. He was a formerly enslaved person, and when he was freed, he was granted like I think over 500 acres of land. Like he was given a lot of land
Mhm.
and a wallet from his slave owner. And he was
Wow.
an entrepreneur. He had a successful farming business. Same thing on my mom's side of the family. So I'm like, okay, I come from a generation of entrepreneurs and
Mhm.
businessmen and women. So it was like I was seeing those traits in my own life. And my dad and my mom were both artists as well.
Yeah, yeah. And the reality of it is you are an entrepreneur right now, and you are an artist because being an author is a different form. A creative writing is a form of art, and so you're living in that dream. For me, like I said, I wanted to be Superman, and what did Superman did? He protected the
Yes.
community. Well, I became a police officer.
Oh,
So
wow. See, it's like the way that you look at things. Like, how do you do that? Like, you can just look like your children's books are going to be amazing. I'm so excited to read them because, like, you're so good at looking at things from a different perspective, and that's so cool.
yeah, thank you. But that's and I guess I get because I get excited when I get to meet people like you, and I get to kind of dive into people's lives because it does. What I've learned about myself is just like what you were saying in regards to the psychology of the mind and things that we bring into adulthood. Are a lot of most times it's something that was not dealt with as a kid,
Hmm.
and so it's allowed me to kind of take all aspects of my life and peel back the layers and look at why do I do things this way as an adult? And then it goes all the way back to childhood. Same thing. I actually had a psychologist when I went through a divorce early on in life, and it was one of those things that when I had a psychologist that helped me to go back to childhood, and I realized certain things about myself that helped me to change how I, navigated life in general once I became, older in life. So I fully agree that, again, in the things that you dream about, it's clear that you never stop dreaming. There are some people out there, I never stopped dreaming, but the people that I'm trying to touch are those that gave up on their dreams and settled on, say, a 9 to 5 job that they're not even happy with, or living a life that they're not even happy with because they feel like this is as good as it gets. And it really isn't. So I think you and I and many others out there are looking to impact and inspire people to remembering that just because you stop dreaming doesn't mean that you can't turn it back on and start dreaming again.
Yes, it's so good that you had that awareness to know what you needed to do in order to move forward. Because a lot of people, I think, I really believe this. I haven't done a study and I haven't asked, a survey of people, but I really believe that we all know what we want to do. We all know what we need to do in life in order to be successful, but very few people actually do it because it's the discomfort of disassociating with this identity that you've been given since you were a child, of people telling you what you should be and what you could do. And we don't really want to take the time to really do the work to unlearn all of that because that's our identity. And we get attached to our identity because that's what ego wants. But the beautiful part about challenging those concepts about what's possible for you or what you can do in life or what you should do in life is that it's almost like you're seeing the world in HD. And once you realize who you really are, not your degree, not your job, occupate, like not your occupation, like you are a divine source. That means that everything is possible for you when you are walking in that truth. And so it is uncomfortable doing the work because, like I said, like you're going through an identity shift, and that's never comfortable. It's like
Mhm.
shedding a new layer. Like I'm pretty sure it's not comfortable at all for most people, but it's so worth it because you never go back. And every time you experience a moment where you feel challenged, like you feel like, geez, like this is an issue, you overcome it so much faster. It's like your recovery time is so much quicker, and it's beautiful. It's beautiful because before, when I started achieving all those things, a lot of the things that you named off in my bio, that was a trauma response. That was me saying, I'm broken. I was a child. I was a teenager. I'm broken. I'm not happy, but I will achieve all these things so that people will look at me as if I was enough, that I was worthy to be loved. It wasn't until I started to do the inner work when I realized that my degree isn't to prove anything. My degree is to show that I can do this. And this is my goal. This is what I prayed and asked God for. So now it's like when you walk through life with that different energetic type of flow, everything comes a lot more easier. Like it's not that you won't have struggles, but like I said, your recovery time is it's much faster, and it's so much more amazing to actually walk in that light and walk in that truth.
Mm, yeah, I mean, you make so many good points in regards to that, and hopefully, you as a listener out there that heard that message, understand that as we go through challenges and as we go through all these different things that can dampen our dreams. I mean, I still dream to this day, and each and every dream that I have, I there's a challenge that comes along with it. But I think for me, I look at those challenges as it's the number one, the roadblock to really test me on how bad do I really want this dream, and will I pursue it? And it also, I've also often heard that in order to get to a level in life that you're trying to reach, you have to become the person that can achieve that. And usually the current state that you're in, the current mindset that you have, is not at the point, again, if you want to be a millionaire, but you have a mentality of, man, I'm just hoping I can pay the mortgage this month. Well, you don't have a
Mhm.
millionaire mentality yet. So you have to grow into that mentality. And it's through the struggle and the challenges that you're able to grow through it. And one of two things happen. Either you back down from the challenges and you never get to where it is you're trying to go, or you grow through it and you become that person that can, attain $1 million and then knows what to do with it once you
Yes.
you do attain it. So yeah, so you make some very good points there.
Yeah.
Um, I, did you have anything else you want to add to that, or?
No, just like listening to you speak, I'm just thinking about psycho cybernetics and how that book really, really supports you as you start to develop your identity. So as you start to become the person that you need to become in order to achieve the things that you want to achieve.
Yeah, absolutely. It's one that's on my list to read. I've heard. Were you in Thinking into Results with John Tellerico?
I'm in it now. I'm like
Okay.
3 months in. Yeah.
All right. Yeah, I know quite a few. I was in it as well last year, and quite a few people have mentioned psycho-cybernetics. So I definitely need to get that, read that one. Um, Next thing I want to kind of step into. This is one of those questions that most of my guests, it makes you think. It's one of those that you have to step back almost. But and I like to just rephrase it as this and just ask you, when did you recognize the greatness in you?
Well, I guess the first time I recognized it was when I was 23. And like I said, that was during that time period, that was one of the lowest times in my life. But I recognized it then because I understood that feeling the way that I was feeling, that low vibrational state that I was in, that wasn't who I was. That wasn't who I am. And so I had to recognize the greatness within me in order to recognize that what I was seeing was not me. And so that's when I started to do counseling. And then over time, when I looked back and recognized that I overcame everything that was stacked against me, everything that was meant to make me fall, I overcame it and I became stronger. And it was the compounding effect of overcoming and developing yourself that you recognize that, wow, like I am very powerful because I'm a child of God. And so there's literally nothing that you cannot achieve once you walk in that awareness. That's why I really believe that you have to know who you are if you want to make it further in this life.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's so funny that you mentioned that, because I think for me, recognizing my greatness probably came a few years before 2016, but
Mhm.
really having to believe in my greatness was just
That
5 years ago,
yes.
2016. And what happened was, so being a police officer, that was a secure job. I knew I had a guaranteed paycheck. So I retired 10 years early in 2013, and it was the scariest thing that I ever
Yeah.
done. There was always that fear of failure, but I had got to a point in my personal development that I believed in me more than I believed in the ability to fail to a point where I would lose everything. And 2016 happened. So in July 4th of 2015 is when I lost my brother. And
Mhm.
then August of 2016 is where I lost my dad. And so two, huge losses within 13 months of one another. And then I had my financial situation, the worst that I ever experienced as an adult, in 2016. And the old me before personal development probably would have just folded and
Yes.
really not known what to do. But it was in that moment that I realized, man, this is going to make a great chapter in the book
Yes.
that I'm going to write in the future. And guess what? It was a chapter in my book. And it was one of those lessons that I learned of, okay, I got to go through this experience because there's something amazing on the other side of it when I get through it. But it takes me back to that moment of recognizing the greatness and believing wholeheartedly in it, that this is just a blip on the radar for me,
Yes.
and that's truly what it has been. So I think, again, we definitely have some similarities in regard
I
to that.
I agree.
Yeah,
Even before, I think the first time we met, Barry, it was on my 26th birthday. You were the MC for Les Brown's Power Voice Summit 4.
yeah,
Um, and it's so hard to believe that that was this year. It feels like a lifetime ago.
I know.
But that was the first time. Yeah. So I was just like, when you were speaking, it made me think about, like, you're right. Like, the first part is the recognition, and the belief is developed over time. But once you have developed that belief, it's like you feel invincible. You're just like, okay, like it's okay. Like when things come, like you said, like when certain things happen in life, you understand that this is only a part of your story, and this is only meant to serve others when you start telling your story, you know?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, we're coming to a close on here. So I want to just ask you one more question, and then we're going to do something special for the audience with you as well. But the last question I wanted to ask you is, okay, so you got a BA, two master's degrees. You're working on your PhD right now. You're an entrepreneur. You're in the military. What's next? What does the future hold for Crystal?
This question is always like, because I always, like, I try to remember that even everything I tried to plan in the past, it never turned out the way I thought it to. It always turned out a lot better. And so I say that, and I say to say that what's next for me looks like me investing 100% into my like my virtual coaching business. It looks like me, continuing to write books and to speak my truth about the stories from my books. It looks like me just spreading my message more, a message of hope and inspiration. Like, that's what I really want to do. And everything that I've learned from being a career student, basically, and from being in the military, like all those things, all those positions, all those basically situations or labels that I had in the past will only serve me in the future when it comes to serving my gift to the world, because I believe that's what we're meant to do. So I really want to take this entrepreneur shifting, like, to the next level. That would be my next goal.
That is awesome, and I have no doubts that you will be able to do just that. I know that you also traveled. Was it Bali that you were in for
Yes.
quite a few months as well?
Yes.
So I'm sure travel is something that's going to be on the future plans as well.
Yes, that's why I really want my business to be virtual, because I read the 4 Hour Work Week, and he talks about, like, the new rich and how time freedom is so important. And so I've
Mhm.
had the opportunity to be in school and to be in the military. And I recognize that in order for me to really take my vision to the next level, it's going to require me to have time freedom and to have the freedom to go wherever I need to go. Because I always like to think globally, right?
Mhm.
There's a lot of people around the world who need your story. And, when I see people like my friends in Australia or in Nigeria who have my book, like, it makes me feel so humble, because I'm just like, you never know who your story is going to impact. So I don't really know what that looks like. I know what it is, if that makes sense. But
Mhm.
I know that if I just keep my faith and I keep developing myself, that it'll turn out a lot better than I could even imagine.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. All right. As we close this out, what I'm going to do is I'm going to pass the mic, so to speak, where I'm going to just give you the screen. And so we've had some great conversations. We talked about challenges in life. We've talked about dreaming. I really just want you to take the next couple of minutes with the viewers here and really just share whatever message you want to leave them with in regards to their lives and taking those next steps.
Yes, thank you so much, Barry. The biggest thing that I would say to you when it comes to getting to the next level in life, the first thing that you need to recognize is that you have to have a goal. If you don't have a goal, if you don't know where you're going, then there's no way you're going to get there. Anything that we do in life, we have to be able to recognize that this is an endpoint, this is where I want to get, and we have to develop ourselves, because the growth happens in the goal. And the only way for you to get to that point to where you recognize that you can achieve your goal is if you develop yourself yourself. You have to read, you have to study, whatever you need to do in order to develop an adequate self-image. I recommend reading books like Think and Grow Rich, Psycho-Cybernetics, books like that help you gain a better understanding of who you are and what you were meant to do in this world. And I also would like to remind you that you don't have to do this by yourself. There is no such thing as a self-made success. Like you have to develop a community. One of the most, I guess, like the biggest blessings that I have in my life is having a community, like Thinking Into Results, like the Power Voice, Les Brown's Power Voice program, having a community of people who recognize the greatness with you, and you can borrow their belief if you still need to develop yours.
All right. Thank you so much. Those are very powerful words that you're leaving us with. And Crystal, I really appreciate you for being here with us today. Ladies and gentlemen, if you are looking to pick up the children's book or the book that she just released in the spring, they're both available on Amazon. They're also, I'm assuming they're available on crystalclearinnovation.com as well.
Yes, the nonfiction book is. I'm still working to get the children's book on my website, as well as the children's book into the bookstores like Barnes and Noble.
Okay, awesome, awesome. All right, well, thank you again so much. And ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us. Hopefully you have been impacted by something that you've heard from Crystal. Definitely go to her website. You'll be able to contact her there at crystalclearinnovation.com and let her know, how the message that she shared has influenced and impacted you, being someone that's 26 years old and has accomplished something that most people in a lifetime are not able to accomplish. So thank you again, Crystal. And for you as a viewer, thank you for being here. And remember this, the struggle is real, but so is your greatness.
Ignite your greatness, take a leap of faith and you'll make it. Wanna live life to the fullest, you gotta be hardworking and patient. You got the fire within you, you got a dream that you should be chasing. Pushing through to the finish line and you got no time to be wasting, yeah. Ignite your greatness, take a leap of faith and you'll make it.